Hey everyone, and welcome to Audiobooks Quiver. Today, we are going to be doing an in-depth summary and review of The Outsiders.
Oh, yeah.
8 unconventional CEOs and their radically rational blueprint for success by William N. Thorndike Jr.
It's a great book, full of fascinating profiles of CEOs who kind of, went against the grain.
Okay, so radically rational, I'm intrigued already.
Yeah.
Were these CEOs like rebels, or were they just super clear-headed?
Well, that's a great question. The book explores that tension.
Yeah.
These CEOs weren't radicals just to be different.
Wow.
They were laser focused on value,
Okay.
which sometimes meant, going against the grain, doing things differently.
Got it. So not necessarily tech geniuses hiding in their garages then.
No, we're talking about CEOs from a variety of industries like media, manufacturing, even aerospace.
Oh, yeah.
But what they all have in common is this. They thought like investors,
Interesting.
constantly asking, how can we use capital to create the most value?
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready to meet these maverick CEOs.
All right. Let's start with Chapter 1, A Perpetual Motion Machine for Returns. This is Tom Murphy and Capital Cities Broadcasting.
Perpetual motion. That sounds almost too good to be true.
Right.
What was their secret?
Well, Murphy had this simple but brilliant formula. Find industries with great economics.
Oh, yeah.
Use leverage to buy big properties, improve operations, pay down debt, and just repeat.
So smart acquisitions and efficiency.
Exactly. But what's fascinating is how they actually did this. Capital Cities was radically decentralized.
Right.
They gave their managers tons of autonomy and really trusted them to make decisions.
Which is unusual, especially for a big company.
Very unusual for a media giant, yeah.
Yeah.
And then their frugality is legendary.
Oh, really?
There's this great story about Murphy buying a TV station and refusing to repaint the peeling facade. Thus, it actually directly impacted ad revenue.
Wow. So he wasn't just being cheap. It was more like a calculated cultural thing.
It was strategic, yeah. It sent a message to all the managers.
Yeah.
Every dollar counts.
Yeah, I see that.
And this mindset, this really showed in their acquisitions. They never overpaid, even for prime assets.
Yeah.
They were patient, disciplined, and always focused on the long term.
I bet that made them tough negotiators.
Oh, absolutely. They made some of the biggest deals in broadcasting, but they never let emotions drive the price.
Right.
They ran the numbers, calculated the potential return, and just walked away if it didn't make sense.
So they bought smart, ran their companies well, gave their managers freedom.
Yep.
What was the impact of all this?
Well, they went from a single TV station to a media empire, eventually being acquired by Disney
Whoa.
for $19 billion.
Okay, I am starting to see why they're called outsiders. They weren't exactly following the typical Wall Street playbook.
Not at all.
So who's next?
Okay, Chapter 2. An unconventional conglomerature. Henry Singleton and Teledyne.
Okay, conglomerature. That sounds intimidating.
Yeah, it does.
Who's this Henry Singleton?
Well, he was an engineer turned business leader, and even Warren Buffett was impressed.
Oh, wow.
He called Singleton the best operating and capital deployment record in American business.
Wow. High praise from the Oracle of Omaha himself. What made Singleton so special?
Well, he built Teledyne through acquisitions.
Okay.
But he wasn't just buying anything. He focused on profitable companies in these niche markets, and he was super disciplined with the pricing.
So he had a strategy and stuck to it.
Yeah. He once said, I'm not interested in buying companies to run them. I'm interested in buying them to buy the stock.
So he was looking at each acquisition as like a stock investment.
That's it. He wasn't emotionally attached to any business,
Yeah.
If the stock price was right, he'd buy. If not, he'd sell, even if it meant breaking up the company.
So that leads us to his most radical move.
Yes, share repurchases.
Share repurchases. That's when a company buys back its own stock, right?
Right. And back in the 60s and 70s, that was unheard of. People thought it was manipulating the market. But Singleton, he saw it as a powerful tool.
So he wasn't afraid to be a contrarian.
No, not at all.
If you thought it would create value.
Exactly. He believed if the company's stock was undervalued, buybacks were the best way to increase the value of the remaining shares.
Okay, pretty bold move, especially back then. Did it pay off?
Oh, it did, big time. Under Singleton, Teledyne delivered an annual return of 20.4% for investors over almost 30 years.
Wow.
That's 12 times the return of the S&P 500.
12 times. These CEOs really knew how to find opportunities where others saw only risk.
They were fearless, for sure.
Oh, who's next?
Let's move to Chapter 3, A Very Different World, the defense industry.
Oh, wow.
This is Bill Anders and General Dynamics, the turnaround.
Wait, Bill Anders, the astronaut?
Yes. The one who was on Apollo 8, the first to orbit the moon.
Wow. What's an astronaut doing running a defense company?
Well, after NASA, he went into government and then landed at General Dynamics.
Okay, from space to the boardroom? That's quite a journey. What was happening at General Dynamics when he took over?
So this was the late 80s. The Cold War was winding down, and the defense industry was facing a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, makes sense.
And Anders came in with a very radical solution.
Okay, I have to know, what did this astronaut turned CEO do?
Well, he basically dismantled the company.
What?
He realized that the defense industry needed to consolidate, and he was bold. He sold off over half of General Dynamics' businesses.
Wow, that's incredible.
Even their military aircraft division, which seemed unthinkable at the time.
So he shrank the company to increase its value.
Exactly. He focused on streamlining operations, returned capital to shareholders through dividends and buybacks, and really doubled down on what they were best at.
I see. So he applied this investor mindset, even though he was running this huge corporation.
Absolutely. He prioritized shareholder returns above all else, even if it went against the grain of the defense industry.
It's amazing how these CEOs are so independent, even though they come from such different backgrounds.
I know, right?
Okay, who's up next?
All right. Chapter 4, Cable Television, John Malone, and Telecommunications, Inc. TCI, Value Creation in a Fast-Moving Stream.
Cable TV. I know a bit about that. Yeah. What was so special about John Malone?
Oh, John Malone. He was a true pioneer in cable, and his approach was very John Malone.
Okay, I'm sensing a pattern here. What was so unique about his style?
Well, for starters, he was laser-focused on cash flow over earnings per share, which was, pretty revolutionary at the time. Wall Street was all about earnings per share, but Malone knew that cash flow was king in the cable industry.
So he was another one of those think like an investor types.
Exactly. He treated his business like his personal investment portfolio.
Yeah.
Always looking for ways to maximize returns.
I bet he wasn't afraid to use debt and taxes to his advantage.
Oh, you bet. He was a master of leverage, using it to fuel TCI's expansion.
And acquisitions? Just as aggressive as the others?
Oh, yeah. He went on a buying spree, snapping up cable systems left and right.
What?
He had this knack for spotting undervalued assets, often the distressed systems in urban areas that other people overlooked.
So he wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, huh?
Nope, not at all. He loved complexity. He was really talented at untangling these complicated deals and turning them into profitable ventures.
So financial wizardry and street fighting.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, and on top of that, content too, right?
Oh, he knew the importance of content, yeah. He acquired stakes in programming entities,
Okay.
which gave TCI more control over the channels.
So he wasn't just building a network, he was becoming a content powerhouse too.
Exactly. Building a vertically integrated empire.
I see.
Controlling both the pipes and the programming.
Wow, this guy sounds like a force of nature. But amidst all the growth in the deals, did he maintain that same frugality we've seen?
Oh, absolutely. Even as TCI became huge, their headquarters were notoriously Spartan.
Really?
Yeah. He believed in reinvesting profits back into the business, not into fancy offices or perks.
It's interesting how this frugality keeps coming up with these CEOs.
It's a testament to their discipline and their focus on creating real, lasting value.
Okay, who's next on our list?
All right, Chapter 5. The Widow Takes the Helm. Katharine Graham and the Washington Post Company.
Ah, the Washington Post. That's a name everyone knows, but I'm not that familiar with Katharine Graham.
Katharine Graham's story is incredible.
Yeah.
One of courage, resilience, and, well, unexpected transformation.
Okay, I'm listening.
She took over the Washington Post Company after her husband's death and faced a ton of challenges. A male-dominated industry, financial struggles, the Pentagon Papers crisis even.
Wow, she was thrown in the deep end.
She was, but she had the strength of character,
Yeah.
She was determined and made tough decisions, like taking the company public to raise capital.
So she was willing to change things up.
Oh, absolutely. And during the Pentagon Papers and Watergate, she stood up to the government.
Wow.
Defending freedom of the press.
She sounds like a true leader. But did her business approach resemble the other outsiders?
It did, yeah. She developed a relationship with Warren Buffett, who became a mentor, who influenced her approach to capital allocation.
So she also adopted this think like an investor mindset.
Absolutely. She started seeing the company through Buffett's lens,
Let's see.
focused on shareholder value. She embraced buybacks, diversified into new businesses,
Okay.
and even acquired Capital City's cable assets, moving into a whole new industry.
So she wasn't afraid to take risks and expand.
Not at all. She was a quick learner and adapted as she went.
It's incredible how she took over and not only kept the company afloat, but took it to new heights.
It's a testament to her leadership and her willingness to embrace this outsider mindset.
Okay, who's up next?
Okay, Chapter 6, A Public LBO, Bill Stieritz in Ralston Purina. Now, this sounds a bit dry, but it's anything but.
Ralston Purina, the pet food company. What's so outsider about that?
You'd be surprised. Bill Stieritz turned Ralston Purina from a big conglomerate into this focused, high-performing consumer goods company.
Oh, okay. How did he manage that?
He had this radical idea, essentially turning Ralston Purina into a publicly traded LBO.
Wait, an LBO? Isn't that what private equity firms do?
Exactly. And that's what's so unconventional. He took this page out of the private equity playbook and applied it to a public company.
Pretty bold. Did Wall Street like this?
Not initially, but Stieritz didn't care.
Really?
He was laser focused on these metrics, EBITDA and IRR.
For those of us who aren't financial experts, can you explain what those are?
Sure. So EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Okay.
It's a way to measure a company's operating profitability without all the accounting and financing stuff.
Got it.
And IRR, that's internal rate of return, basically how you calculate the profitability of an investment over time.
Okay, so Stieritz was using these metrics to make sure Ralston Purina was running like a well-oiled machine.
Exactly. He was all about efficiency and constantly looking to improve margins and returns.
So he wasn't afraid to shake things up, even breaking up the company.
Nope. He was a master of spin-offs.
Spin-offs.
Yeah, using them to unlock value and create these more focused entities.
So he was always reshaping the company, buying, selling, spinning things off.
Yep. All to maximize shareholder value.
Which ultimately led to, I'm guessing, a pretty good acquisition.
It did, by Nestle, for a premium price.
Wow, another CEO who wasn't afraid to do things differently. It's like they all have this knack for adaptation and reinvention.
Absolutely. They weren't bound by tradition or the way things should be done.
Okay, I'm ready for the next chapter. Who's next?
All right, Chapter 7, Optimizing the Family Firm, Dick Smith and General Cinema. Now, this is about a CEO who inherited a company and took it to new heights, even though he initially, lacked experience.
A CEO without experience, that's not usually a good sign, is it?
Well, that's what makes Dick Smith's story so interesting.
Okay, so how did he do it?
He inherited General Cinema, primarily known for its drive-in theaters.
Yeah, drive-ins.
Yeah, he wasn't a seasoned executive.
Okay.
But he was smart and eager to learn.
So he was an underdog.
He was, and he embraced those outsider principles.
How so?
He made big changes, selling off the drive-ins, shifting to shopping malls, and he had this approach he called investment with involvement.
Investment with involvement. What's that?
Well, it means he didn't just buy stocks. He sought out companies he believed in, then took an active role in their management.
Interesting.
Often through board seats.
So he was hands-on.
Very much so. And this led him to some amazing deals, like acquiring Neiman Marcus.
Whoa, the luxury retailer. That's impressive.
It was a big deal.
So he wasn't afraid to go outside his industry.
Nope. And he was also disciplined with capital allocation.
Okay.
He hated diluting shareholder value. He wasn't afraid to hold big cash positions while waiting for the perfect opportunity.
Patience. A recurring theme with these CEOs.
Definitely. They weren't chasing quick wins.
Okay, I'm ready for the final CEO. Who is it?
Get ready. This is a big one. Chapter 8. The Investor as CEO, Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway.
Oh, of course. The Oracle of Omaha himself. What else is there to learn about Warren Buffett?
Well, even if you know a lot about Buffett, this chapter dives deep into how he built Berkshire, revealing some of the maybe less talked about aspects of his success.
Okay, I'm listening. What are those hidden gems?
One of the big takeaways is the role of insurance in Berkshire's success. Buffett sees insurance as this way to generate float, the premiums collected that can be invested while waiting to pay out claims.
Ah, the famous Buffett float. I've heard about it, but never really understood how important it was.
It's been huge for Berkshire's growth.
Yeah.
It's this giant pool of low-cost capital that he uses to invest.
It's more than just collecting premiums then.
Absolutely. It's about using those premiums strategically.
Got it, got it.
And what's even more interesting is that his approach to insurance is different, too.
Really? How so?
He prioritizes profitable underwriting over just growing premiums, a long-term value-oriented approach.
That makes sense. He's not just chasing growth for the sake of growth.
Exactly, he's playing the long game.
Right, like all the CEOs we've been talking about.
Exactly. And this long-term focus, you see it in his stock portfolio, too.
Yeah.
He's known for his concentrated portfolio and his really long holding periods. He's not a trader.
Yeah, he's an owner.
Exactly.
So does he take that same approach with his acquisitions too?
Oh, absolutely. He targets companies with simple business models, ones he truly understands.
Okay.
And when he sees an opportunity, he moves fast. He's not afraid to pay a fair price,
Okay.
but he also knows when to walk away.
It's fascinating how all these CEOs from different industries all seem to have a similar set of principles.
I know, it speaks to the power of this outsider mindset.
Yeah.
They were disciplined, patient, willing to do things their own way.
Okay, before we wrap up this part, I'm curious, for those of us who aren't running billion-dollar companies, how can we apply this outsider thinking in our own lives?
That's a great question, and luckily, Thorndike addresses that directly.
Oh, good.
In the final chapter, Radical Rationality, the Outsider's Mindset.
Okay.
He argues that these principles apply to any situation where you're allocating resources, making decisions.
So whether we're entrepreneurs, investors, or just making everyday choices, this outsider thinking is valuable.
Absolutely. And he actually gives us a checklist to use when making decisions.
Oh, like a cheat sheet for smarter decisions. I like that.
It is. It encourages us to really think about returns, risks, financing, even the strategy behind every choice we make.
Like always thinking like an investor, even in our personal lives.
Exactly. We can step back, look at things objectively, make choices that help us reach our goals.
I like that a lot. This has been a really insightful conversation.
It is a great book.
Yeah, I'm adding it to my reading list for sure.
We'll be back soon to keep discussing the outsiders.
Okay, sounds good. Until then, keep learning.
And keep questioning.
Absolutely.
You know, before we jump back into the CEOs, Thorndike uses this analogy to show how anyone can use these outsider principles.
I like analogies. They help make things clear.
Yeah. So he uses the example of a bakery trying to decide how to grow,
Okay.
Like, should they expand their store, buy a new oven, or open a new location? The bakery across the street just expanded and is doing great, so conventional wisdom says, do that, but our outsider baker thinks differently.
Of course.
Oh.
So what do?
They crunch the numbers, just like the CEOs we talked about, right?
Okay.
Let's say expanding their current store costs $50,000
Okay.
and we'll give them a 20% return.
Okay.
Opening a new store, that's $100,000, but a 30% return.
So at first glance, the new score looks better
Right.
because of that higher return.
Right, but our outsider baker knows it's not that simple.
Oh, okay.
They start asking tough questions, starting with the risk.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A new location, that's more uncertainty. Will sales be as high as projected?
Yeah.
Is that higher return enough to justify the risk?
Right, you have to look at both sides.
Exactly. And then there's the financing. Can they even get that extra $50,000? And if they can, what will it cost them? Maybe taking on that much debt isn't worth it.
Yeah, sometimes the best opportunities are out of reach.
Yeah, especially when you're starting out.
Right?
And even if they can get the money, they got to ask, is this really the best way to use it? Maybe there are other better options out there.
It's like chess. You got to think several moves ahead.
I like that. And then lastly, strategy. Does the new store offer more than just a financial return?
Yeah.
Does it help them diversify, maybe open up new markets?
Makes sense.
Maybe those factors outweigh a slightly lower return?
So it's not just about short-term profit. It's about long-term success.
Exactly. That's the outsider mindset.
I see.
Think like an investor. Consider all the angles, make decisions that create value over time.
I love how that analogy makes it so clear. It shows how these principles can be used for any business.
Exactly. Big or small.
Right.
That's one of the most important things from this book.
Yeah.
These CEOs, they weren't just lucky, They had this rational approach that anyone can learn.
It's inspiring to think that we can learn from them, even if we're not, running these massive companies.
Absolutely. So now that we have that framework, let's get back to the CEOs. Chapter 8, The Investor as CEO, Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway.
Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha. I feel like I've read so much about him. What's new in this chapter?
This chapter goes deeper, beyond the stories everyone knows.
Okay.
It shows how he built Berkshire and some of the things that might not be as well known.
Interesting. What are some of those hidden things?
One big thing is the role of insurance in Berkshire's success.
Okay.
Buffett sees insurance as this way to create float, the premiums they collect,
Yeah.
that they can invest while they wait to pay out claims.
Yeah, the float, I've heard about it, but never fully understood it.
It's been huge for Berkshire,
Okay.
like a giant pool of cheap capital that he can invest.
So it's more than just collecting those premiums. It's using them wisely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is his approach to insurance is also different.
How so?
He focuses on profitable underwriting, making sure they're making money from the insurance itself.
So it's not just about getting more and more premiums.
Exactly. He wants it to be a good, solid business.
Right.
It's a long-term approach, and this long-term thinking, it's in his stock portfolio, too.
Yeah.
He's known for his concentrated bets, holding stocks for years and years. He's not trading in and out.
Yeah, the buy and hold approach.
Exactly.
So is that his approach with acquisitions too?
It is. He targets companies with business models he understands.
Okay.
And he moves fast when he finds a good deal. He's not afraid to pay a fair price, but he also knows when to walk away.
It's really interesting how all these CEOs share that long-term focus.
Yeah, it's a core part of this outsider mindset.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's talk about that last chapter, radical rationality, the outsider's mindset. What are some of the key things Thorndike says?
In this chapter, Thorndike brings it all together.
Okay.
He talks about how these CEOs had this consistent way of thinking and acting.
Okay.
They didn't like dividends. They were disciplined with acquisitions. They used leverage carefully, and they embraced buybacks.
Okay.
They all had decentralized organizations and focused on cash flow, not just reported earnings.
It's amazing how they all came to a similar approach from such different backgrounds.
I know, right? It really shows how powerful this mindset is.
What else does he say about their mindset?
He talks about their independence, their patience, their pragmatism, their decisiveness.
Okay.
They were all willing to challenge the norm, to go their own way.
It's inspiring to see how successful they were.
It is. And it wasn't just about luck or genius. They had these principles that anyone can learn and use.
Yeah, that's what I like about this book. It's not just stories. It's a guide to better decision-making.
Exactly. It's a roadmap to building a successful business.
I'm really glad we talked about this book. It's given me a lot to think about.
And if you're looking for more in-depth summaries and reviews of great business books, be sure to subscribe to our channel, Audiobooks Quiver, on YouTube.
We have so much great content coming your way.
But before we go, what stood out to you the most from these CEOs? What really resonated with you?
What really struck me was their commitment to the long term. They weren't focused on the quick wins or trying to impress anyone. They were building lasting value.
That's a great observation. They were masters of delayed gratification,
Yeah.
willing to wait for the real rewards. That's something we can all learn from, whether we're running a business or just managing our own finances.
Absolutely. A great reminder that good things take time and patience.
And that sometimes the best path is the one less traveled, the outsider path.
Yeah, it's like they had this ability to just ignore the noise and focus on what really mattered.
They weren't playing by the same rules as everyone else.
It's almost like that's what made them outsiders in the first place, huh?
Exactly. They weren't swayed by Wall Street or those, fleeting management trends.
Right. They had their own path.
Yeah, they had their own compass guided by like a deep understanding of value.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about these 8 CEOs, all these different approaches, but as we wrap up, what are some key things our listeners can take away from this? Whether they're running a business or just trying to make better decisions.
That's a great question. I think one of the most important takeaways is thinking like an owner, not just a manager.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
These CEOs, they saw their companies as investments,
Right.
and they always prioritize creating value over the long term.
So it's about applying that investor mindset to everything we do.
Yeah, it's about asking ourselves, how can I use my resources,
Okay.
whether it's time, money, energy, to get the best results over time?
I see. It's about seeing every decision as a chance to create value.
Exactly. And another big takeaway is discipline and patience. These CEOs, they were willing to wait for the right moment.
It's so hard to do that these days. Everyone wants everything right away.
It is tough, but it's about resisting that urge to react,
Yeah.
Taking your time, looking at your options, and making choices that get you closer to your long-term goals.
I like that. And of course, we can't forget about decentralization, trusting your team.
Oh, yeah. So many of these CEOs built amazing businesses by empowering their people.
Right, giving them the freedom to make decisions.
Yeah, it's about building a culture where everyone feels valued, respected, trusted to do their best.
So it's more than just the numbers, it's about the people.
Exactly. Success is a team effort.
Couldn't agree more. Well, this has been a really inspiring conversation. I'm so glad we dove into the outsiders today.
Me too. It's a book that makes you rethink things, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And if you enjoyed this in-depth summary and review, check out our YouTube channel, Audiobooks Quiver, for more great book summaries and discussions.
Yeah, we're always exploring new ideas, and we love sharing our passion for learning.
We'd love for you to join our community.
Yeah, come check us out.
Until next time, keep
Yeah.
learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing those boundaries.